The climate conference in Paris has started. All the parties are now negotiating in order to find an agreement to fight climate change, to reduce greenhouse emissions, and to support developing countries to face climate change. In this debate, the World Bank has a role to play. That's what we are going to see with our guest, Mr. Jim Yong Kim, the president of the World Bank. Mr. Kim, hello.
Gregoire, thanks for having me on.
What are your expectations for this conference?
Well, we have very high expectations. This is probably the most important meeting ever for climate change. And so we have to have a lot of ambition coming out of this meeting. And a few years ago, we would never have guessed that there would be 180 plus specific concrete plans coming from the countries. Now, out of the 180 that have been submitted, this is called INDCs, the Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, about 130 of them are from developing countries who are our clients. And so to see this level of ambition is really very striking.
What would you consider a success?
Well, I think we need to have great ambition. We need to really say to the world that these 180 plans, not only are we going to take on the task of putting them into action, but in 5 years, we're going to reassess these plans and see if we can be even more ambitious in the next 5 years. I don't think we're going to get a binding agreement on all the targets, but I think there will be something about the agreement that will be binding and that will give us a foundation to build on going forward.
And what would you consider a failure in this conference?
Well, the most important thing is that in these first few days, the leaders have to give very clear instructions to the actual negotiators to say we must have an agreement at the end of this process.
And what role the World Bank can play in this conference?
Well, our role has been in the finance of it. So, we came through in our annual meetings in Lima in October and put the $29 billion on the table, and that was a very good start. Now, not every penny of it will count toward the 100 billion, but a good chunk of it will count toward the 100 billion. We've also made it clear that we are interested in coming up with new ways of financing. We're actually a bank. We have a balance sheet. We can go to capital markets and raise funds. And so we're ready to look at any innovative ways of financing the needs, for example, of the poorest countries to have access to sustainable energy. We're also very involved not only in thinking about the preparation of the nationally determined contributions, but we're in very close discussions with the countries so that we can begin to implement right away.
The World Bank has also emphasized the fact, which is that fighting climate change is a way to reduce inequalities.
Absolutely. So we believe that fighting climate change is intimately connected to our two goals. And one is to end extreme poverty, and the other is to reduce inequality by focusing on the incomes of the bottom 40% in developing countries. There is no way to achieve those goals without tackling climate change. In fact, we just released a report that suggested that if we don't aggressively attack climate change and do everything we can to both mitigate and adapt to climate change, then an additional 100 million people will be plunged into poverty by 2030. Our goal is to end extreme poverty by 2030. So in other words, if we don't take an aggressive approach to climate change, there's no way for us to reach our goal of ending extreme poverty.
What kind of actions could be done to fight both climate change and reduce inequalities?
For example, Africa is actively losing land. Land is deteriorating, it's becoming desertified. So we're announcing our support for something called the Green Wall. Building literally a green wall to protect existing arable lands from becoming desertified. We need to be better at adaptation to extreme weather events, for example. Just simple things like early warning systems in the case of extreme weather could have a huge impact. And finally, we need more data. We need to really understand where we are in building the capacity to adapt to climate change in the form of more climate resilient agriculture, roads, for example, that can work even when there's flooding, cleaner, more livable cities. These are the kinds of things that we need to understand where we are and to use the data, use the knowledge that we have to help Africa take the next step.
Mr. Kim, thank you.
Thank you.